Fury 325 is a steel roller coaster made by Bolliger and Mabillard located at Carowinds in Charlotte, North Carolina, while also crossing the border to Fort Mill, South Carolina. Loosely themed to a hornet chasing its target while not being confirmed if it was a reference to the Charlotte Hornets basketball team or not, the ride has this famous reputation for being one of the greatest coasters of all time, going as far as to win the Golden Ticket Award for Best Steel Coaster every single year since the year after it opened. Now yes, it's pretty safe to say that a lot of people who have ridden this thing absolutely adore it, including myself. It's a guarantee that I'm going to give it a high score at the end along with my recommendations. However, I'd still like to try to go in depth as much as I can and share what I like about the ride as well as some minor nitpicks, and I do mean minor nitpicks here. Intimidator, now known as Thunderstriker, was a massive success for Carowinds, leading to more constant investment in the park. However, a few years after its installation, rumors were swirling about a roller coaster changing the appearance of the park forever, particularly a Giga coaster, meaning the lift hill or drop height is between 300 and 399 feet, something even taller than the last coaster installed. Fury 325 was announced as Carowinds' largest investment ever on August 21, 2014, with records being held such as the world's tallest and fastest Giga coaster, the tallest roller coaster with a lift hill, the manufacturer's tallest coaster, and the longest steel coaster in North America. As enthusiasts, a lot of us have learned by now that stats don't make a roller coaster great. It's how the layout and elements are utilized, but in some cases, both the stats and experience can equally be good. Fury 325 is in the latter here. This attraction received rave reviews from guests almost instantly after opening, with even some hardcore enthusiasts calling it their favorite roller coaster of all time, and again, it's pretty safe to see why. Starting things off with simply the ride's presentation. Instead of just making a good roller coaster, the park decided to go out of their way to spruce things up. When you're arriving at Carowinds, it understandably makes a bold first impression since it's one of the tallest coasters out there. The 325-foot tall lift hill can be seen from pretty much anywhere in the park, and even on I-77. The color choice they went with is also phenomenal. Even though the paint's definitely fading quite a bit, the teal track with the lime green stripe underneath and white supports really stand out against the blue sky, and I love white supports on roller coasters, but this just might be my favorite color scheme of all time. Even the lime green lap bars pop out against the teal and sky blue. It is that eye-catching. It also provides my favorite front entrance experience of all time. Sure, a lot of coasters recently have been interacting with the front gate, and I love Gatekeeper at Cedar Point's interaction with the keyholes that are literally built on top of the entrance building. But this one, however, the train is just flying above you at 95 miles per hour, and after you walk underneath the coaster, there's this massive amount of space in front of you while you're surrounded by teal track before you even enter the park, which just adds another level of excitement. Everyone's going to want to do Fury 325 first for this exact reason. Even though there's typically a strategy for enthusiasts to do rides either in the middle or the back of the park first to avoid the longest lines, the structure on this is so beautiful and exciting to look at that it's hard to resist that temptation. Therefore, you may not mind waiting in line for it. Assuming you didn't choose to go to the middle or back of the park first, you'll walk up to Fury 325 and notice that it has its own dedicated entrance plaza, featuring a well-designed sculpture sign of the logo and scattered with hexagons all around you in some form, including the tarps in the queue. There are even cell touches placed throughout the area, like a sign showcasing all the Golden Ticket Awards it's won. Part of a fence outside the entrance has been painted with the slogan, "Feel the Sting." Another little touch was placed during the ride that we'll get to a little later, and sometimes the ride operators will even wear Fury 325 uniforms. Carowinds did not need to do any of this, but they know that Fury 325 is their marquee attraction and the impact it's had on everybody since it opened almost a decade ago, hard to believe. Now getting into the actual ride experience, you start climbing up the 325-foot tall lift hill and hear a safety spiel with some impressive sound effects and a futuristic voice. While ascending, you also get a stunning view of the rest of the park to your right, and if you look closely to your left, you can actually see downtown Charlotte before you slow down at the top, with it being roughly 20 minutes away from the park and featuring the tallest lift hill in the world. Speaking of being relatively close, there's a chance you might notice that some of these clips were filmed with planes flying above this coaster. In fact, you'll notice this throughout the entire park during your visit. This is because Carowinds is roughly 20 minutes south of the Charlotte Douglas International Airport, and many of these planes are either taking off or landing. In fact, I'm not entirely sure if Carowinds had a height limit or not at the time, considering they have rides above 200 and even 300 feet. But due to the coaster's proximity with the airport, they had to get approval from the Federal Aviation Administration before constructing the ride. Anyways, getting back to the coaster itself, the first drop on this ride makes you feel like you're falling for an eternity before leveling out at the last minute, graying out at the bottom, and in some cases, the grayout lasts until the top of the first turn. The layout's also filled with a lot of these rapid-fire transitions, both high above and low to the ground. Oh, and halfway through the experience, riders traverse this massive and unique turnaround known as a treble clef. This is a moment where you go up a half helix and stall at 91 degrees before you twist out of it, creating a very sustained moment of ejector airtime. Afterwards, you dive back down underneath a bridge that connects to the main walkway, and through these hexagon rings where at night they glow green, which just adds more attention to detail. Some of these bank turns give out a little pop of airtime too as you transition from left to right or vice versa. They also contain some nice sustained laterals as you fly over the walkways. Yeah, I said it. Laterals on a B&M coaster, and they're some of the strongest laterals I've experienced in my life. These moments are so powerful that with the clamshell lap bars, they're genuinely scary to me, even as a hardcore enthusiast, but the ride doesn't just feature turns. If you want to experience more traditional airtime, you'll find that in the form of both floater and ejector airtime during the last third of the ride, making for an epic finale. I know a lot of people say the treble clef is their favorite part of the ride, and while that moment is amazing on its own, I slightly prefer the airtime hills at the end of the ride, because like the turns, they feature some of the strongest airtime on a B&M period. In fact, this whole thing in general does not feel like a coaster they would manufacture, despite sharing the same track, supports, and train design as their other creations. Many of the company's newer coasters, including their newest Giga coaster, Orion at Kings Island, feature more graceful, drawn-out elements. Sure, their older coasters feature compact layouts with tighter maneuvers, but their main goal nowadays is to build coasters that appeal to a wider audience. That's why the general public love B&M Hyper, Wing, or dive coasters, especially since those old-school whippy transitions are considered rough and jerky. Therefore, they're not for everybody. The drawn-out moments to me are fine for what they have to offer. However, I myself love a roller coaster experience that has some strong airtime, good pacing, whippy transitions, and sometimes a long duration, especially when some of these newer B&Ms are definitely on the shorter side. Fury 325 has exactly what I'm looking for, and it still helped B&M achieve their goal for Carowinds. They built a coaster that appealed to both the general public and hardcore coaster enthusiasts alike, and yeah, of course I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. It can't be any higher or lower than that. It is the definition of a full package experience. Before I give out my recommendations, I mentioned in the beginning of the video that there are a few minor nitpicks, and once again they're minor because it absolutely makes up for those in every other way, including some you don't really think about while riding. There are a couple dead spots on the ride, and the first one is that overbank turn after the treble clef. After being thrown around like a ragdoll, you just kind of glide through straight track as you exit the maneuver, and it can be pretty underwhelming from an on-ride perspective. But you do get great views walking underneath it, and I understand that with the walkway, they couldn't level it out sooner. The other dead spot is that large helix underneath the first overbank turn, because you don't get any positive g-forces like you do with Orion's helix. There is, however, a cool near miss when you're underneath that first overbank. There's this one support you travel under where you get really close to it, providing a nice head and hand chopper moment, and the track and supports in front of you look huge. Orion has that similar visual to it with its helix. The final con I have with this ride is probably the most nitpicky thing I can point out here, and I swear I'm one of the only enthusiasts who noticed this. This coaster's smooth in the way that the wheels hug the track, I believe, but I wouldn't call it glossy smooth like some of the other B&Ms in the park. There's definitely a bit of a rattle present on this ride. It's not as strong as most of Kings Island's B&Ms, but I still think it's noticeable. My theory on this is just because of the pure speed this ride delivers, along with the positive g-forces these low-to-the-ground moments provide, nothing to do with the ground or footers. Thankfully, though, it doesn't give you a headache or ruin the ride to the point where you can't ride it over and over again. I can overlook these minor nitpicks and just enjoy this masterpiece for everything it did right. It is a near-perfect ride experience, and if it's not on there yet, plus depending on your availability, it should be a bucket list item for both enthusiasts who've never ridden it, and the general public to travel down to Carowinds and feel the sting on Fury 325.